Joe Lopez, President, National Latino Peace Officers Association, local Santa Clara County chapter.
Good afternoon, Rudy Rodriguez. I'm a trustee on the Franklin McKinley School Board.
Good evening, Walter Katz, San Jose's Independent Police Auditor.
Danny Garza, Chapter Chair for MAPA, the Mexican American Political Association.
John Garza, New York Life.
Mayra Garcia, Enlace Program Coordinator at Evergreen Valley College.
Daryl Cortez, Executive Director, Shop with a Cop Foundation, Silicon Valley.
Good evening, Curtis Jacobson, Fire Chief.
Erika Salazar with the Office of Assembly Member Ashkara.
Anthony Mata, San Jose Police Department.
Alex Lee Natali with Perseverance Preparatory School.
Patrick McGarrity with the Office of Councilwoman Sylvia Reynolds.
Good afternoon, everybody. Victor Perez with the Office of Supervisor Cindy Chavez.
Good afternoon. My name is Mario Lopez. I'm with Supervisor Dave Cortez's office.
Patty Cortese, trustee with the Eastside Union High School District Board.
John Alvarez, Pacific Fundraising, here to help small groups, large groups, any group raise funds.
Jose Salcido from Councilmember Johnny Campas's office, District 10.
Dave Knopf, Assistant Chief of Police.
Julie Guillen, Latino Caucus.
Alberto Correa, retired from the county and member of the GI Forum.
Luis Mariscano with Transamerica.
Frank Espinosa, Faculty Member at Evergreen Valley College and a member of the Enlace Coordinating Committee.
Janina Espinosa, Faculty Member at Evergreen Valley College and Enlace Coordinating Committee.
David Lopez, the Foundation for Hispanic Education and former president of the National Hispanic University.
Eduardo Roscoe, intern for Mayor Rich Strand.
Gabrielle Jean-Pierre, community member.
Jose Salazar, ex-Enlace student, current student at San Jose State, and co-chair for Student Advocates for Higher Education.
Hello, my name is Kenya, and I am a current San Jose State University student.
Hello, my name is Jaime, current San Jose State University student.
Johnny Camas, San Jose City Council Member, District 10.
Hello there, Mayor Rich Tran, City of Milpitas.
Dave Cortese, President, Board of Supervisors.
So tonight, I was conflicted about what to share and what to talk about tonight. And I thought, immigration, of course, has been very heavy in my mind. And I thought, we've talked about this before. I think we're really pretty much covered. But it kept coming back, and so that's one of the areas that I'm going to focus on. And I'm going to focus on it in terms of a type of reflection, sharing with you who I am and sharing my past so that we can all understand our future as part of what we do as human beings. And I'll just discuss just a little bit about the anti-immigrant sentiment and how that is changing our families and our children, and how as a group we can all get involved. So I grew up in the east side of San Jose. My parents were immigrants from the state of Zacatecas, and I was raised in a very distrustful way. They were very distrusting of others, of this society, and they were really clutching to their customs. And I think in real fear that they would disappear and their children and their customs would disappear into this greater culture. So, my dad always he worked really early and very intentionally so that he could always be available to pick us up after school, because it was just not a good idea for, he had 6 daughters and 1 son, and so it was not a good idea for us to have a lot of free time. And so, he would drive me home, and during that drive, he would warn me of others and people who weren't like me. Right? People who weren't Mexican could not be trusted. And, he would just drill that, and there was a lot of skepticism. And I think, I reflected for a really long time that I think my dad missed his calling as a priest because he could preach. He could really preach. And, as a black sheep of my family, I would always push back. I pushed back, one, because I was a young teenager and I believed in the good of the others and the world, and and I still had a little bit of rose-colored glasses at that time. And so I didn't understand why they were so suspicious of everyone who wasn't like us. And, you know, they incessantly tried to convince me to stay with my own people. My sisters brought home a boyfriend who was not of our ethnicity. It was just not, you know, it just didn't approve. And, but that made me want to trust others and look at others who were different from me in a different light. And it actually created a doubt for my own family and a discomfort for the way my parents were carrying out their culture and their customs. But as I got older and my dad shared his experiences as a bracero, because he was a bracero for many years, living half of the time here in California and the other time, which is, you know, when it's non-picking season, he would go back to Zacatecas with my mother and half of my siblings. And so he, you know, shared with me the maltreatment of ranchers, you know, the inhumane living quarters, you know, that were available for braceros at that time and still continue to happen. And then really dirt low wages that he earned and collected so he could return back to Mexico with some money to be able to sustain his family and have better opportunities. But I didn't realize it until I was a younger adult, that those were the awful experiences both of my parents had in the fields with ranchers and those who demeaned them just for the sake of, for being in this country. Their presence alone made others uncomfortable, and so that was the main source of their distrust and resentment. And, you know, it took me a while to get past my own doubt and finally understand why my parents warned me of others and the many lectures I sat as a captive teenager in my father's truck on my way home from school. But now as a mother, last year my son Andres, he was in first grade last year. And at that time I was still campaigning, and I had picked him up from school like I did, you know, every day. And so he asked me, you know, if we go to Mexico, will I get arrested? I said, of course not. You're not going to get arrested for going to Mexico. I said, if you're doing something not, you know, against the law, and if other people do things against the law, they might get arrested. But I thought it was a really strange question, and so I looked in the rearview mirror and I saw his face, and it was, you know, he was sad and confused, and I could tell that was not my son, who might have been exploring an idea. And so I asked him a couple more questions, and in the end he shared with me that a classmate had said to him earlier that day that he needed to return to Mexico, otherwise he would be arrested. And that, you know, just created a lot of tension and anxiety for him. And, you know, my heart broke. As a mom, I knew he was hurt because, he was singled out because of the color of his skin. You know, he might have been from Nicaragua, he might have been from another Latin American country, but he was discriminated because of the color of his skin and assumed to be Mexican. And the way he looked at me through that rearview mirror, I knew that his awareness of people's discrimination and racism and prejudice had just woken up. And I also realized that there was a lot of unfiltered adult conversations going on in our children's homes. And that, you know, our children are repeating things that they hear. And so I think we need to be very responsible and accountable as to how we ourselves as Latinos, as Mexicans, as folks from other different ethnicities, but are supportive of those who right now are struggling, how we talk about Trump and how we talk about the people on the other aisle who don't agree with us. Because our children are growing up, and I can see that in my son. And I apologize, I'm getting really emotional. I didn't realize how emotional I was going to get with this. But my son is growing up with anger and a lot of resentment. And as you can, we all already know that an angry brown man is a target of a lot of bad stuff. And so it really is up to me to guide him and for me to change that anger into willingness to help others and to motivate him to do other things that he can feel that he's a part of the solution. And so during my campaign, he was my official doorbell ringer, and he was my little soldier. He would be with me, rain or shine, he would be out there with me. And so really, I think it's our responsibility as parents and aunts and uncles and grandparents and friends to have these kind of constructive conversations about what is happening on a national level. And not just for our own sake, but for the sake of the next generation and what they will grow up thinking about others who don't look like us. So of course, like a mama bear, I spoke to that teacher and she had that conversation with that class and a conversation with that student. And I explained to my son, of course he's a citizen, I'm a citizen, his dad is a permanent resident, so he still has a little bit of fear, he still continues to ask those questions, and I continue to have chats with him in the car, at home, and wherever, he has 2 seconds to sit down and listen to mommy, but I try to tell him to understand where other people are coming from so that he can understand and have a real argument about where we stand and how we embrace others. And so that conversation with my son on that ride home from school really changed everything for me. It reminded me of the rides home from school with my dad and what he was trying to protect me from. And now as a mom, I'm doing the same thing for my son. And so my parents' story is like many immigrant families, and unless you're a native to this land, we are all immigrants. And I'm grateful to their sacrifice and the risk that they took despite the exposure to danger and a new way of life. Their bravery changed the course of their lives, it changed the course of my life, and it changed the course of my son's life. My journey to public service really began with my family and my parents. Although they were skeptic, they also prioritized family before any individual need. And so, even though I had a hard time accepting this value, because in this country, individual need is first and foremost, it ultimately really planted a seed of responsibility, social responsibility, in me for others, and to do my part and make a difference. And so, as José had said, I worked for the city of San Jose for many years, for First Five and Government School District and Gardner. I was the first to be born here, but not the first to go to college. And I was the first to serve in a school board in my family, but not to have a master's. And being elected to the city council has been by far my deepest and proudest first. Because I'm able to stand up for others in a way that I think I owe my family and friends and others who have come before me. It is now my responsibility. And so as we discuss Trump and his executive orders that will affect our community, there's a lot of rhetoric about the disadvantages and the deficits that non-documented immigrants have in our society. And we are all responsible for bringing balance to that discussion. soon enough, we're going to have a huge exodus of baby boomers. They don't want to retire, but they will be retiring, and it'll be a huge gap for us in terms of our workplace. And our next generation won't be able to fill, which Generation X. We just don't have enough population to be able to fill that void. And so with a combination of workforce and less people paying into the Social Security system, there's a huge gap. And that's where the immigrant population comes into play. And the majority of our immigrant families, they're not documented, but they're earning a living here and they're paying taxes. And so they're really contributing in a very meaningful way to our Social Security system. And we don't recognize how much they subsidize, because instead of working in their own countries, they come here in their prime. And so their country of origin has already paid for their education, if they've had education, medical expenses, and any government programs. And so the U.S. really takes advantage, or has the advantage, of those workers who are in their prime to work. And we don't see that. You know, we don't see that subsidy that other countries have afforded the U.S. But, you know, prosperity and justice are within our reach. And history teaches us that we can and will continue to overcome as long as we continue to support one another. And I know with the leadership of many who are here in this room and many of our political leaders, I know that we're going to fight the good fight for immigrants and women's rights and refugees, so that we can hold up a true democracy. And, you know, on a final note, I would urge all of you to share your past so that we can understand our future, and especially with the younger generations, because it's our responsibility to connect and mentor others so that they can join our efforts in public service. And then I know for me, the friendship and mentorship that I received with many leaders in our community, it made a huge difference. And it was absolutely vital for my ability to grow in public service. And so I think, you know, lastly, I just want to say that we have to pay it forward to all of for our next generation. And please become involved in a lot of the programs there's a lot of wonderful programs that Conexión already has in place. We don't need to reinvent the wheel. And so I would urge you to take part of that, because you never know. You know, I'm a daughter of immigrant parents. I grew up in the East Side. I never in my wildest dream thought I would be a councilwoman, but here I am standing before you because I have the passion and the heart to serve, and that's what I intend to do. But thank you so much for lending an ear and giving me the opportunity to share some of my past and some of my experiences. You've been a wonderful audience. Thank you so much.
We're all here. Most of us are here, you know, standing on the shoulders of many other people that came before us, right? And I learned this in a class, but the Rubén Salazar's of the world, the Rodolfo Corky Gonzalez's of the world, the Cesar Chavez's, the Dolores Huertas, and even the Victor Garza's of the world. So I'm appreciative and very humbled to even be up here. But all those people, and if you don't know who they are, look them up. They're very important people. But thank you so much for having me. So my story is one of very humble beginnings. I was born in Mexico. I was born in Ciudad Juárez, right across the border from El Paso, if you're familiar with that. My mom was a single mom. She had 7 children. I was the second to the youngest of 7, and as many immigrants do, in search of a better life, she decided to bring us here to the United States. My dad was absent. He said, you know, I just don't want to be around, quite frankly. She brought us to the States. We landed in East San Jose, and for many, many years we lived in a small 2-bedroom affordable housing unit in El Rancho Verde apartments. If you guys know El Rancho Verde, when I say that, people are like, oh yeah, I remember that. but it was home, and it was a wonderful place, and so, you know, she, like many immigrants, was seeking a better life for her family. Even today, obviously, that continues to happen. And so the story of immigrants and the things that are happening now are very personal to me and very meaningful to me, that organizations like this and the senators that were here last month really stand up and fight the good fight for a lot of people that, quite frankly, aren't at the table and don't always have a voice. And so I value that, and I carry that with me. And so early on, we were undocumented. My mom, you know, esa señora loca, she came here, she did something crazy, and we overstayed our visa. And we were undocumented for a little while until the amnesty came about in the 80s. And I always tell people that I'm a product of amnesty. I'd like to think that I'm a product of amnesty, and it shows that it works. And so, because I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for that. And so we became residents in the mid-80s, and I'm happy to report that my mom and other siblings I became a citizen in 2009. I actually haven't been a citizen very long, and I did it by choice. It was a very meaningful thing for me, and sometimes it's amazing to me that my mom even had a chance to vote for me. She lives in District 2. And so I carry all that with me, and I went to Lee Matson Middle School, I went to Mayfair Elementary, I went to Independence High School, and a quick fact I should tell you is that Landip represents District 4, Magdalena Tarrasco, Sylvia Arenas, and myself all went to Independence High School. Yeah, and you guys thought Bellarmine ran. It's Independence High School that runs the city. And so we're very excited, and I think we're going to do a lot of wonderful things together. But, you know, similar to what Sylvia was saying, my mom, for about 27 years, she worked at a fast food restaurant. She worked at Carl's Jr. in Santa Clara. And so every morning, because I slept on the living room floor, that was my bedroom. So every morning at 4:30 in the morning, I'd hear her rustling, gathering her things. And then I remember laying down, and I'd open up my eye, and I see her step into the darkest of the morning, going to catch bus 81 that ran down McKee Road. And seeing that happen day after day, year after year, really instilled in me some of the values that were mentioned earlier, you know, the values of family, of hard work, of helping others, and of working hard, and of being resilient, of bouncing back when you face adversity. And so shortly after moving to District 2 many years ago, and we were finally able to buy a house, I decided to get more involved. And so what I did was I went to our council member and asked him, you know, if there was a neighborhood association in our area. He said no. So I decided to start one. So it's called the Oak Grove Neighborhood Association. Now we have about 1,000 members, and I really, it was often me, a Latino, leading a lot of more experienced Caucasian folks. And so, but it took a lot of time, and it was very important to me that I invest the time needed to make my community better and try to instill that into my kids. And that is sort of what led to the path and where I'm standing today. Because around that same time, I also was appointed to the Parks Commission in the city of San Jose. I was the only Latino on the commission at that time, and I was there for 6 years. And 2 of those years, I served as the chair of the Parks Commission. And so along that time, I also worked at a nonprofit, the Law Foundation of Silicon Valley. And in addition to that, I served on the board of Somos Mayfair in East San Jose. And that's why, as you can tell, serving on the board of Somos Mayfair was really my attempt many years back to really go back to my roots. And really go back and help the same community where I came out of, right? The community of San Sigüenza. One of the reasons I decided to run was that I wanted to make sure that folks like myself, immigrants, people of color, people from modest means really had a seat at the table, right? We're part of the conversation. And so I thought it was very important to run to be able to give people a voice that didn't have one. Once you know where someone comes from, their upbringing, you know, what they experience, I really do think that provides the lens by which I see the world. So what I hope that you take away by me sharing with you a little bit of my story is that you understand who I am. I can't help but see the world through my experiences. And I take those experiences when we're asking questions in the city council meeting, or we're on the public safety committee, where I'm an ABAG, right? I always wonder, what are we doing to those folks that aren't at the table? Who's at the table? And so I take very important the privilege and the opportunity that I have to be there, to be that voice, be the eyes and the ears of the community, looking out for folks like me that didn't have a voice. And so motivating the Latino people to vote is something that's very important to me, and we're going to continue working on that in a lot of different aspects. So I just wanted to finish off touching on a few things. There's a lot of things happening in front of the city of San Jose. I just wanted to tell you 2 important things that I think are important to focus on. One is housing policy. To me, housing is the bedrock of all successful families, right? It touches everything. Education, jobs, security. It provides the ability to build community, which helps solve some of these other issues. And without that, I'm not sure we're going to solve some of the bigger issues. So I hope that my intention is that this first term and even into the second term, if I win, is that I hope to focus on housing. You know, I grew up, as I mentioned, in Rancho Verde, and it was a very densely populated apartment complex, but and we were poor. We didn't have much, but I can tell you what we did have was community. You had the lady that would sell ices in a bag, frozen ices, to buy school clothes for her kids, for my friends. The lady that would see her neighbor's son doing something would come out of the apartment, grab him by his ear. So that's the type of community that I grew up in. So community and having stable and consistent housing is super important. And I think it's our duty to make sure that the most vulnerable in our community are taken care of. And so I wanted to just say that. And there's certainly some other issues coming before us. Mobile home parks. We're going to be looking at a closure ordinance, a conversion ordinance, because I'm not sure if you all realize, but there's some mobile home parks in the city of San Jose where they're senior parks. And what's happening is the owners of those parks, you know, the rental market or the real estate market is very hot. So what they want to do is they want to close some of these parks, build up housing. Some of that's happening across from Santana Row. So when you go to Santana Row, think about that. So the public safety is very important. I worked at the public defender's office for many years, and I certainly value what the police chief does. I think he's great. The fire chief is here, but I don't necessarily just see public safety as everything, as our men and women in uniform. I really do see public safety as a broad spectrum. Everyone from the dispatcher all the way down to the school crossing. I certainly look forward to working with the IPA as well as the chief to try to make that possible and try to give the community that clarity that they thirst for, because I think it's vitally important if we're going to build trust between the community and the police. I'm new at this. When you mentioned the youth program at the beginning, I was thinking, can I be part of that? Because I'm still learning how to do this, right? The learning curve is steep. But I really do think that we have the best interests of the community at heart, and I seek to be a public official, an elected official that's accessible, that's present, and that's responsive to the community. And I look forward to proving that and having you see that in the years ahead. So thank you very much.